Next on Currents News, vandalism at a church and Catholic academy in Queens. The graffiti is covered up, but now the question is, was it a prank or is it gang related? I'm Tim Harfman and I'll have more.
Also on Currents News tonight, former Pope Benedict breaking his silence, reaffirming the necessity of a celibate priesthood in a book about to be published. And the message from Pope Francis about baptism as he christens dozens of babies at the Sistine Chapel. Plus a New York Knicks great and Brooklyn's own Bernard King hosting a CYO clinic in Queens for the next generation of hoop stars. Currents News starts right now. Good evening, I'm Lydia Serrani. Tonight, New York police are hunting for a suspect who was seen on camera scrolling gang symbols on a Queens church and school. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports from Bayside that this is the latest episode of vandalism that has struck in many places.
This is what's left. Gang symbols spray painted on the walls of Sacred Heart of Jesus in Bayside, Queens. Parishioner Joseph Ruggiero is outraged.
I'm beyond upset. I'm absolutely appalled. This is an absolute disgrace.
Surveillance video captured an individual early Sunday morning scrawling MS on the front door of the parish's Catholic academy. This came moments after the same vandal sprayed MS-13 on both sides of the church's main entrance. The NYPD's Hate Crime Task Force is investigating, but Sacred Heart's pastor, Monsignor Thomas Mahalski, doesn't believe there's malice against the church.
I don't think it was targeted, no, because apparently this has gone on throughout Bayside.
At least 2 Bayside homes and a local pharmacy were also spray painted. The violent international gang MS-13 is strengthening its presence, particularly in neighboring Nassau and Suffolk counties. Bayside residents think it could have been a prank.
I don't think it was people from that gang. I think it's just somebody who scrolled those things up on the wall.
It's a very quiet suburban area.
Monsignor Mahalski has a message for the vandal.
You need to find more constructive things to do with your energy, because the energy you wasted on something like this could be put to so much better use.
And Monsignor says the parish plans on installing additional surveillance cameras around the church. No word yet on how much it will cost to remove the taggings from the building. In Bayside, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
And just hours later, a Brooklyn church was attacked during Sunday morning services. At the 9:30 a.m. Mass at St. Anthony of Padua Church in Greenpoint, a man stepped up to the altar and apparently poured juice all over the sacred space as the priest was celebrating Mass. The man said nothing, stepped down from the altar, and just stood there. Police immediately responded, and the man is now in custody. Stained glass windows at St. Patrick's Old Stone Church were smashed, among other damage in Yorktown. The FBI has joined police in the investigation. Hanukkah stabbing suspect Grafton Thomas is now facing federal hate crime charges. He was arraigned today, accused of attempting to kill people because of their Jewish faith. He's charged with attacking 5 victims with a machete during a Hanukkah celebration in Muncie, New York on December 28th. He pled not guilty. If convicted, Thomas could spend the rest of his life in prison. Now for a big story that involves 2 popes and the debate over priestly celibacy. Benedict XVI is defending it as a necessity. At the same time, Francis is considering the ordination of married men. Currents News' Emily Druby is here now with more. Emily?
Lydia, Benedict is outlining those beliefs in a book due out this week. Excerpts have appeared and are sparking claims that there's some sort of rift between him and Pope Francis. Clergy we spoke with said that's just not true.
I don't see them as opposites. I see them as together working for the good of the church.
He would be hurt and he would be disappointed if he thought that people were interpreting his actions to be undermining the Holy Father, Pope Francis.
Auxiliary Bishop Raymond Geppetto and Father Peter Pepora of the Brooklyn Diocese say Benedict XVI's book doesn't undermine Francis. Instead, it's a great theologian weighing in on a critical topic.
We have to respect each of them and respect the teaching authority of a Holy Father, Pope Francis, at the same time not discounting the wisdom of Pope Benedict. We need to listen to everybody in the discussion.
The book is co-written with Cardinal Robert Karl, the head of the Vatican's liturgy office. They're insisting celibacy is crucial because marriage and the priesthood both demand total devotion. In October, a majority of bishops at the Amazon Synod called for the ordination of married men to address a shortage of priests. Pope Francis, who convened that summit, has always upheld priestly celibacy, but has spoken about possible exceptions.
There would be some possibility only for remote places like the Pacific Islands.
Many are calling Benedict's intervention extraordinary since he previously pledged to remain silent during retirement.
Anche se per il mondo rimango nascosto.
Here in the Brooklyn Diocese, clergy say the book comes from Benedict's deep religious understanding, not from a place of disrespect.
He's shown himself to be someone that wants to add some depth and some further clarity to discussions. And I think a lot of people in the church look to him for that because he has such a wealth of knowledge that the people want to know what he thinks.
The Vatican is calling the book just a contribution written in full obedience to Pope Francis. Lydia?
Now, Emily, does Benedict address his relationship with Pope Francis in the book?
Lydia, it's actually right in the intro. The authors reaffirm their obedience to Pope Francis, so it seems they're trying really hard to show respect for the Holy Father.
Thank you so much, Emily Druby. New twists tonight in the crisis involving the United States and Iran. Protesters are storming the streets of Tehran demanding answers after the regime admitted to the deadly shootdown of a passenger plane. Here at home, members of Congress are looking for explanations over the drone attack that killed Iran's top general. Whitney Wild reports the latest.
The lead European aviation agency recommends commercial flights avoid flying above Iran, a sign they think the situation in the Middle East remains volatile after a Ukrainian plane was shot down last Wednesday. Families of the 176 victims are demanding change.
I hope as an outcome there will be some preventive measure put in place so this tragedy will never ever happen to another family ever again.
Over the weekend, Iranian officials admitted to downing the passenger jet, mistaking it for a cruise missile. Protesters in Iran took to the streets and denounced their government's actions, but some joined Iranian officials who blamed the U.S. for creating a warlike atmosphere.
I was dismayed that their first reaction was to blame it as American propaganda or some type of mechanical failure. I think they did the right thing by admitting it. Now they need to allow the investigators in and take responsibility.
Back in Washington, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declined to testify at a hearing on the Hill this week focusing on Iran. Some lawmakers voiced skepticism that an Iranian threat against the United States was imminent.
I think that it was both the lack of transparency as well as the nature of the threat, that there wasn't consistent information.
President Donald Trump via Twitter reiterated his administration made the right decision. In Washington, Whitney Wild, Currents News.
More than 30,000 Filipinos are being evacuated after the violent eruption of a volcano not far from Manila. Flashes of lightning, lava, and ash spewed from the Taal volcano this morning. The sky turned dark across the region, and experts are warning that an even more, quote, hazardous explosive eruption was possible within hours to days. Flights at Manila's main airport have been canceled as ash covered the city. So far, there's been no word of injuries or deaths. There's no relief ahead from the huge wildfires that are torching Australia. Rain forecast for this week probably won't be heavy enough to put out the flames. Australia's Catholic Church is going to hold a national collection on January 26th in all of the parishes to help the victims. More than 24 people, an enormous number of animals, have died. California has dispatched 35 disaster specialists to Puerto Rico following a series of earthquakes that have caused extensive damage and power outages. A week ago, a 5.9 earthquake rocked the island with several strong tremors since. Puerto Rico's governor estimates the quakes have caused $110 million in damage. President Trump's impeachment trial in the Senate could start as early as this week. The House impeached him last month, but Speaker Nancy Pelosi has held off on delivering the impeachment articles to the Senate. That pause in the process could be nearing an end. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi signaling the wait is almost over, saying she's ready to send the articles of impeachment to the Senate this week.
I've always said I would send them over, so there shouldn't be any mystery to that. We have confidence in our case that it is impeachable, and this president is impeached for life.
Pelosi relaying a strong warning to her Republican colleagues like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who has backed a resolution to dismiss the charges against the president.
Dismissing is a cover-up. If they want to go that route again, the senators who are thinking now about voting for witnesses or not, they will have to be accountable for not having a fair trial.
President Trump firing off a warning too, tweeting, "Many believe that by the Senate giving credence to a trial rather than an outright dismissal, it gives the partisan Democrat witch hunt credibility that it otherwise does not have. I agree." The White House has been prepared to start the Senate trial since before Christmas, one official says. CNN has learned White House counsel Pat Cipollone and Trump's outside counsel Jay Sekulow will likely represent the president. Senator Susan Collins has indicated she is working with some of her Republican colleagues to see if they can reach an agreement on calling witnesses in the Senate trial. A House vote to transmit the articles to the Senate will bring to a close the standoff between Pelosi and McConnell over the rules for the trial, but ending that showdown only starts another as both parties try to set the terms over debate of high crimes and misdemeanors. The list of Democrats running for president is shorter tonight because Cory Booker has dropped out. The New Jersey senator struggled to gain traction in the polls after entering the contest last February. His exit comes less than a month before Iowa kicks off the nominating season with caucuses on February 3rd. Bernie Sanders leads the latest poll in Iowa, edging out Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, and Joe Biden. Those four candidates will be joined on stage by Amy Klobuchar and Tom Steyer tomorrow in the latest Democratic debate. The setting is Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. With the narrowest field yet, the hopefuls will have more time to appeal to the voters. It'll be the 7th of 12 Democratic debates. We'll have a comprehensive wrap-up on tomorrow's Currents News. And still ahead on tonight's Currents News, Pope Francis on the importance of baptism, allowing children to grow with the strength of the Holy Spirit. And at a CYO clinic in Flushing, the next generation of basketball stars getting pointers from Brooklyn's own NBA Hall of Famer Bernard King. And later, Hollywood meets the Vatican. Lots of Oscar love for the new film, The Two Popes. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip with us? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. More than 24 babies got a one-of-a-kind welcome into the church. Pope Francis baptized 32 sons and daughters of Vatican employees on Sunday. Melissa Butts files this report from Rome.
Once a year, the Sistine Chapel is full of the youngest and the cutest members of the Catholic Church. It's on the feast of the Baptism of the Lord, when Pope Francis bestows the same sacrament on these children. Pope Francis baptized 32 children, sons and daughters of Vatican employees. During the homily, the Pope explained why baptizing children soon after birth is important.
Battezzare un figlio è un atto di giustizia per lui. E perché? Perché noi nel battesimo gli diamo un tesoro, noi nel battesimo gli diamo un pegno. Lo Spirito Santo.
Pope Francis tried to make the families feel at home and not overwhelmed by the formal ceremony taking place inside the Sistine Chapel.
Non spaventarsi. Lasciate piangere e sgridare I bambini. Questo sì, se il tuo bambino piange o si lamenta, forse è perché ha troppo caldo, togliere qualcosa, o perché ha fame, allattalo. Qui, sì, qui. Sempre in pace. È una bella predica quando piange un bambino in chiesa. È una bella predica.
There were some surprises during the baptisms. 2 families baptized 2 children, and this little one showed the Pope a loving display of affection. Another less-known scene took place. Georg Ganswein, prefect of the papal household, handed out the small white baptismal vestments to the children. Pope Francis always speaks briefly during the Mass before spending time with each family and baptizing the children. He also always encourages the sounding cries of the children that resound throughout the Sistine Chapel. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Meantime, French bishops have approved a change in their baptismal certificates. Now the papers will remove the genders of parents. That's being done to line up with the country's new gender equality laws. The French church still opposes same-sex marriage. Convicted Australian Cardinal Pell is in a new prison tonight. He was transferred from a Melbourne jail after a drone flew overhead in an apparent attempt to photograph him. Pell is serving a 6-year sentence for molesting 2 choir boys in the late 1990s. The aircraft circled the prison garden where Pell had been employed weeding and watering plants. Beginning on February 1st, China is instituting a slew of new regulations aimed directly at unregistered Catholic and Protestant churches. Now, joining me now to talk about what that means is Dr. Robert Karl, professor of historical theology at the King's College in Manhattan. Thank you so much, Dr. Karl, for being here. Now, you spent time teaching at the Chinese University of Hong Kong in the early 90s. What did that experience teach you about the Chinese government's attitude towards religious freedom, which we all know isn't too tolerable?
Well, I taught for 2 years in China and 2 years in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And yeah, at the time I was teaching there was hope that China would open up, that China would follow a path of liberalization with regard to religion. It has not.
Wow. Now, as for the new regulations on churches, what will the actual impact be on Chinese Christians?
You know, the unregistered house churches are organized like, I guess the closest organizational model in the United States would be like Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, farmers in a field will have a meeting in a home like at 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, and the Christians will meet and then they will disperse. There's no budget, there's no exchange of money, there's...
so very informal.
It's very informal, and it's spread by word of mouth. So for those groups, this will not have much of an impact. But for those who have actual church buildings,
organizations and
yes,
organized type of religion,
this could have a big impact. I mean, China is really trying. They see especially Christianity and Islam, as real enemies of the state.
Right, and their attitude towards Chinese Muslims hasn't been too friendly either.
Well, they're especially worried about Chinese Muslims.
Right. Talk to me about that, because we've been hearing all these reports.
Yes, there's a million Uyghurs that are in re-education camps in Xinjiang in West China. I mean, that's 1/10 of the population of Xinjiang.
Writing in Religion Unplugged, you suggested that as China's economic influence increases around the world, that its government won't be merely content to curtail the free speech and religious liberty of its own citizens. Can you talk to me more about that?
Yeah, no, China is definitely trying to shut down free speech about China in the United States through their network of Confucian institutes, which are located on American college campuses. They have threatened Google and Apple in ways that have led to Google and Apple deleting apps. Even hotel employees are not immune from Chinese wrath. I mean, a Marriott employee who was in Nebraska was fired because he liked a post about Tibet.
Wow. So it seems that the regime hasn't changed much over the year, hasn't progressed much.
No, in fact, under President Xi, it has regressed.
Wow. Dr. Robert Karl, professor of historical theology at the King's College in Manhattan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
America's bishops are still arriving at the Vatican for their ad limina visits and meeting with Pope Francis. The clerics are reporting on the status of their diocese. Despite the seriousness of the topics, Tennessee Bishop Richard Sticca tried a little humor with the Holy Father.
I even asked for his cell phone number when I was confused that I can call him, but he didn't give it to me.
Francis told Bishop Sticca that he liked his sense of humor. Turning now to an amazing opportunity for Catholic kids in Queens this weekend. A legend in basketball, NBA Hall of Famer Bernard King teaching the next generation. He says these lessons can help them throughout their lives. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports from the court.
St. Kevin Church in Flushing wanted young players to learn about basketball from one of the best, so they brought in an NBA Hall of Famer.
I was very grateful. It was a very fun experience.
You get to meet somebody that's really good at something, and then you get to learn skills and stuff.
New York Knicks great Bernard King hosted a clinic for nearly 50 children Saturday. The 6'7" forward spent 14 stellar seasons in the NBA. Now he's giving an assist to the next generation of hoop stars.
It's very important to have kids understand that they can enjoy themselves playing the game of basketball, but it's also equally important to have other individuals help young people.
The Brooklyn native taught the kids the basics of dribbling, using the backboard and the give and go.
And he'll pass it back to you, okay?
Amaya Hernandez is only in the 5th grade, but has sights on playing professionally. What was that like to receive a pass from an NBA Hall of Famer?
I mean, it was a little nerve-wracking at first, but overall I got used to it.
She could reach her goal by following King's advice both in and out of bounds.
The lessons you learn in basketball are the lessons that you need in life. And part of that is commitment, conditioning, listen to mentors.
If you learn from that advice, you will get better.
Fundamentals for a slam dunk to success. In Flushing, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, it was a groundbreaking children's book from a Brooklyn author, and now more than 50 years later, it's winning a new honor. And the film, The Two Popes, is getting recognition from the Academy Awards. The details next. Before the break, a programming note, this Thursday at 7, we'll begin a Currents News special series on human trafficking. It's a silent epidemic happening around the world and right here in our own backyard. How survivors, women of faith, along with the power of the papacy, are battling to end this growing humanitarian crisis. Join us for our in-depth special series, Human Trafficking Exposed, beginning this Thursday at 7. The New York Public Library has revealed the book that tops the list for having been checked out the most in its 125-year history. It's a beloved children's book from Brooklyn-born writer Ezra Jack Keats. It's called The Snowy Day. It was a groundbreaking book for its time. It was one of the first books to feature a character of color. It's about an African-American boy named Peter enjoying his city's first snowfall of the season. The book was checked out more than 480,000 times since it was published back in 1962. And finally tonight, Oscar nominations came out this morning, and Pope Francis and Pope Benedict are both up for awards. Well, the on-screen versions of them are. Jonathan Pryce and Anthony Hopkins received nods for their portrayals of the pontiffs in the Netflix movie The Two Popes. Pryce spoke about what makes the film great.
What's wonderful about the film is that I think we don't make too many judgments on the characters. And it's up to the audience to make up their minds whether these are people they would want to follow.
The film follows a fictional relationship between the two men as Pope Benedict is debating stepping down from his post. And that's Currents News. I'm Lydia Serrani. Thank you so much for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time. Good night.